Their identity has been stripped. But there is strength in numbers here.
And that was the feeling from USAID workers 1 week ago as they cleared their offices in Washington, D.C. The agency has become a target of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. And this morning, we want to go behind the headlines a bit and take a closer look at the effects of these funding cuts. And joining us now, John Doherty. He is the Associate Professor of Economics over at Loyola University, Maryland, Selinger School of Business. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you, Jason, for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming by. You know, a lot of people just know USAID by the initials.
Yes.
Describe to me just how much work they have done in the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's the United States Agency for International Development.
Yeah.
And they're the leading organization worldwide for international development, for poverty alleviation efforts.
Okay.
So they nutrition programs, they fight diseases.
Sure.
So in particular, malaria, HIV/AIDS, and Ebola right now, which is, again, an issue currently in Uganda.
Yeah.
They do a lot of education work, helping kids get to school.
Sure.
Some of my own work. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer,
Right.
Before I was a professor at Loyola. And a lot of their work involves supporting farmers, so helping them build resiliency to things like droughts, things like that.
Is there an equal organization to that? Can anyone match what USAID does, or are they preeminent, throughout the world, what
They're
they do?
preeminent, I would say,
Okay.
from my understanding from working with them. And again, they go back all the way to the Kennedy administration. 1961, they were founded. And I also wanted to point out that they, even though they have a huge impact in the world, they're only actually 0.6, so less than 1% of the federal budget.
Oh, really?
If you poll people, a lot of people think, oh, we spend 20% of our budget on aid. It's actually 0.6%.
So when you think of that number, what was the knee-jerk reaction when you heard about cuts and you began to see video like we just showed of people being fired?
So I think that, again, it's more, sadly, it's not going to be, so if our concern is fighting the deficit, it's a very small portion, right? It's not going to be nearly enough to make a noticeable difference on that. But it's sad because it does have a big impact on people's lives.
And let's talk about that a bit, because I think here we don't talk about malaria in the U.S. because we don't deal with it. Or we heard the president, rattling off some of the things that other African nations specifically were dealing with, and we don't because I think we may take it for granted here. But over there, it's probably a huge issue.
For sure. Yeah. So malaria in particular. So there's a lot of things that USA does, as I mentioned, but malaria is one of the leading killers of children in the world. I think right now it's the third leading, but it's close to the top. And the USAID has a lot of programs for like bed nets, for programs that like mosquito eradication, different treatments, prophylaxis treatments, all for children and for adults as well. I know that I saw a memo that said in the next year, the estimate was potentially up to 166,000 people could die from malaria that wouldn't have died otherwise. As a result of these particular cuts. Now, it's hard to know for sure, and hopefully other people will come in and step in and do some of that work.
Sure.
But what's clear is that a lot of people's lives are at stake with some of these cuts.
How needed or necessary is the help? Because when you were doing Peace Corps work, when you would see some villages or cities that needed that type of aid, is this a life and death matter for some folks?
Yeah, for some folks, absolutely.
Okay.
And again, I would also stress that like for any organization, any big organization, there's always room for changes to make things more efficient.
Sure.
There's always probably certain specific programs that if they were carefully targeted, could be cut or could be reduced. But the idea of like cutting across the board, you're hitting super important life-saving treatments. Children that are malnourished, mothers that have, so for example, a mother with HIV/AIDS, if she has access to antiretroviral drugs or for medicine, she's way less likely to pass that on to her child. But now those programs are currently frozen or cut. So there's been a lot of children born with HIV/AIDS that wouldn't be otherwise.
Do you think it's easy for folks here to sort of look the other way because we don't see it on a daily basis?
Yeah, and it's like a statistic, right? I mean, you hear about it, this number, and sometimes it's hard to know exactly which numbers are true. Some person will say one thing, one person will say the other thing. But it's like, every person is equal in dignity, and it's like these are, people that are, especially the speed at which this has been happening, like they're, children showing up to get some treatment or showing up to get like a nutrient paste, the students that are malnourished, and they don't understand why it's not there because it was just cut overnight.
Are there things, we're only about 30 seconds left or so, are there things people can do now here in the U.S. That can help aid some of these programs, or just people in general abroad? Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think certainly, hopefully the administration will change its mind on some of these things. There's some indication that there's some pressure for them to do that. Certainly also, supporting local development organizations. So
Okay.
I just wanted to put a shout out for
Please
CRS
do.
right here in Baltimore.
Oh, okay, CRS.
Catholic Relief Services.
Okay.
Yeah, so they hire 400 people right over in the Lexington Road office, and they do awesome work. About a third of their funding comes from USAID grants.
Oh, wow.
So they're struggling right now, and they could really use support. So for people watching, I'd recommend supporting them. But there's also a lot of all sorts of other organizations here in Baltimore and around the world that can do some of this work, but are badly in need of funding now with these cuts.
Okay. John, good to see you.
Jason, thank you so
Thanks
much.
for stopping by. We appreciate it.
it.